Welcome to the Tiger Interview Series.
In this episode, we have legendary instructor Steve Hacker, who shares stories on his 25 years of teaching, how context matters when analyzing MLB video, and how we might be overthinking everything. Not a person who uses social media, Steve Hacker is one of the best kept secrets in baseball, being an instructor who has helped many players reach the highest ranks in college and has also seen some of them make it to Major League Baseball. You will enjoy this frank and honest conversation around hitting. Give us your thoughts on launch angle by commenting below if you're watching the video. If you're listening to the audio version, give us a review on the conversation and make sure to subscribe and follow us on YouTube at Rawlings Tigers and the Tiger Interview Series on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Enjoy the conversation.
I do have some notes if this comes up.
All it is a conversation, Hack.
What does your note say?
It's an article that I love. It's about Cody Bellinger, who I've always been somewhat obsessed with.
Now, I'm surprised that you like Cody Bellinger.
Well, are we doing this now? Or
We're doing it.
We're on.
We've been on for like
great.
a good 6 minutes, a good 6 minutes, my friend.
Well, first of all, and I can't prove this. I don't know if there's a number to prove this, but the whip, that's just a term I've learned, but the whip he has with his swing, I've never seen anything like it.
But he's an upward swinging guy.
Right. So that's why I'm obsessed with his downfall. I mean, and how great. I think he's great. Mm-hmm. You know.
So
how
his
close
downfall for this season?
Yeah, he's not starting.
Yeah.
You know, it's an amazing to go from MVP to not starting. And I know I brought it up, but to me, this whole launch angle, as far as elevating all the time, and that's your constant swing. The term that I've used, and I even wrote it down, it's not sustainable, in my opinion.
So launch angle is not sustainable.
Not if you do it all the time.
But launch angle is not necessarily. I've always approached it this way: is that it's an uncontrollable, in my opinion, because it's the result that comes off of the bat.
Right, and that's where it gets tricky. I mean, people think the launch angle, and if I've read it correctly, and somebody made this term up, so I mean, it depends on who made it up, but it's the ball. It's not the swing.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's coming off the bat.
Right.
The angle at which the ball
comes
off the bat. But again,
Right.
like if you think about trying to control that, that's nearly impossible when you're throwing 98 miles an hour with a nasty cutter.
Exactly, and that's why. I'm telling you, if you ask 10 people, a random 10 kids that play baseball, what launch angle is, they think it's a swing.
Oh yeah.
I ask them in the cage every day. I mean, every day, you know, and it's just a misconception. But Bellinger actually had a very, very heavy uphill swing, and then he went to the World Series and broke a record for strikeouts. And then it's hit or miss, literally, no pun intended. And then I have an article on my computer, and it says Bellinger lowers launch angle, wins MVP award, and I love it. You know, it's just he flattened out a little bit at times, and more so than usual, and he put more balls in play. And he'll still get his 30, 40 home runs, but he also, you know, an MVP, whether it's Pujols in the day or Barry Bonds, those guys, they don't give the MVP to somebody who hits 45 home runs and hits 190. They give the MVP to the guy who gets a lot of hits. Nobody cares about batting average these days, but that's such a farce to me. You know, batting average. This is what I love about this article. One of the phrases they use, this is about Cody Bellinger, and it's from Dave Roberts, the head coach who played in the big leagues a long time. Played with Bill Miller, my friend, who played in the big leagues and won the
hitting title.
Thank
right?
you, hitting title for the Red Sox. But Dave Roberts,
that was during the postseason run in 2004,
I believe so.
Or
but you know, playing at Missouri State where you and I played, and having a guy who didn't get drafted till he was a senior, and probably got a plane ticket to sign, and ended up being the batting champion. Anyway, Dave Roberts is a teammate of his, and I have it right here. Roberts says his messenger to Bellinger is to, quote, go back to being a hit collector, unquote. A hit collector. Well, guess what gets batting average? Hits.
Yeah.
You know, and he also goes on to say, who hits line drives into the gaps. If they start carrying to the seats, so be it. So in essence, I mean, this is verbatim what Coach Gutton, our mutual coach,
yes,
it's exactly what he told me in 1993, 4 and 5 when I was at Missouri State. Just go drive the ball. If some of them go out, great. They don't. You're still going to hit 90-something RBIs and hit a bunch of doubles off the wall. Now, to be realistic, as a power guy and a corner guy, you do have to hit home runs, but they'll happen. If you're a big, strong dude.
Well, I feel like that's more of a curse than a blessing at the same time, because I feel like there's more pressure for a bigger guy to hit home runs than a littler guy. Like me, like if I didn't hit a home run, it's like, oh,
Right.
okay.
And then that's a great point, and I can attest to that because I was a big guy and I had to hit home runs, and it's a mind screw. And every coach I've ever had, even one of my managers in the big leagues one of my managers in the minor leagues is a current big league manager, Brian Snitker for the Braves. And Glenn Hubbard, that same year in Macon, Georgia, was our hitting coach. He's a 10, 12-year big leaguer. Both those guys. When I broke my finger right before the first game, doing fungos before the game, ground balls. And so I missed the first month of the season in 1997. And I was a slow starter anyway.
Hold on, before you get down that story, guys, this is Steve Hacker. He is.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I was waiting. I was going to see how long you strung that out.
I mean, when you get him going, I like listening. And I like listening to stories, so I didn't want to interrupt, but I had to interrupt now so that the listener on the other end is like, who the hell is this guy? He's like, he's starting to name off these guys and like.
I'm name dropping.
Keep doing it.
This is Steve Hacker. He is one of our lead hitting instructors here in the St. Louis area. He also has a hitting course on the Tigers VIP based all on fundamentals and his philosophy on hitting. So if you are a Tiger, go onto the VIP section and you can see that whole course. I think it's about 15 videos in total. We filmed that about 2 years ago, and then I add in stuff here and there when we start. When I look at each winner and saying, "Oh, we can update it here." So, but Steve has had an unbelievable career. How many home runs did you have in Double-A?
Double-A, I hit 27, and then I got bumped up to Triple-A that year and hit 2 more in Triple-A.
And do you still hold the home run record at Missouri State?
The single season record.
Because you led the nation that year.
Yeah, I led the nation in home runs in 1995 with 37 home runs in 58 games.
So would that have put you in the Golden Spikes Award?
I was in the running for, I think there was an ex-coach for the Dick Hauser Award is what they called it, I think.
At that time, yeah.
I think they called it. It was the Player of the Year Award. An ex-manager for the Royals. But whatever the top players in Baseball America and all that stuff, I was in the running for that.
How do you not win that?
Because, I didn't learn this till later, and I'm so glad. It's really not cursing them, so to speak, now, but we just weren't, at the time, Missouri State was Southwest Missouri State, and nobody
that
knew.
name doesn't look too good on Billboard.
Nobody knew who the hell that was. And I know Jose Cruz Jr., I think, was up for it, and
played at Rice, didn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
There was some studs, and
Had that been like the Will Clark and Palmeiro era too?
They were before me.
Oh, they're before you.
Yeah, but the one who leads the whole deal in home runs for NCAA Division I is Pete Incaviglia, who I'd heard of as a kid. I think he had 47 or 48.
Yeah. But they also played like 90 games.
Right. So I honestly, I think our own Shannon Hoffman helped me do it once on the calculator. I think my percentage of home runs per game for one season is the highest ever for a D1 season. But there's about 4 or 5 guys that have more home runs than me. I think Lance Berkman is one of them. I know Pete Incaviglia. There's a guy named Jeff Ledbetter, which I always remember him because there's a Pearl Jam song called Yellow Ledbetter, which I really like. So it always intertwines.
Why do you always relate stuff all the way back to rock and roll?
Baseball and music, baby.
I'm a music guy.
Dave told me a story where, what was it? You were talking to Lump.
Yeah,
Lump is the pitching coach for
Paul Evans
for Missouri State,
great
and
guy.
Coach Evans is just like Hack. He loves rock and roll.
Yeah.
And you were talking to him about recruiting.
Yeah, we were doing stories here just about an hour ago, and I was telling Pratt, I was like, it was one of our training nights like 6 years ago in the Tiger Center, and you had the hitting guys and I had the pitching guys, and I'm sitting there kind of texting on my phone, and you're like, why are you texting, dude? Put that away because it bothers you.
It does.
And I normally never do, and I'm like, well, hold on, I'm actually doing work for the Tigers here. I'm texting Lump on one of our pitchers, and he's like, oh, hey, ask Lump who the lead singer of Pearl Jam is. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not going to text him that because I didn't know Paul. I knew Paul in a working manner. I didn't know. He's like, just tell him Haxon. And then all of a sudden I send it to him, okay. Then he goes, he rattles off the lead singer, and he's like, okay, tell him the lead singer of Guns N' Roses. Ask him. And I'm like, I'm not getting in the middle of this.
Even driving down here, when certain songs come on from when I played, I have just got a memory that goes with music. And if a certain song comes on, and I can remember being in Eugene, Oregon, driving to the field, hearing that same song and striking out 4 times or whatever. But that's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
But I have a couple of funny lump stories if you want one or two. Would you like one or not?
I would love to hear one.
Paul Evans, great guy, but he is a pitching coach. At least when you get to college and pro ball, those people are completely separated. The only times we saw pitchers were we saw them hit us fungos. They shagged in the outfield, PFP, and then doing rundowns and stuff like that. But otherwise, Coach Evans and his crew are over there in the bullpen and running and do whatever they do. And then all the rest of us position players are over here. So we didn't interact much, to be honest with you. But one day, my junior year, 1995, I show up for a doubleheader, which happened to be on local TV that day. And so they were setting up the cranes for the cameras in the behind center field and stuff at Meadow Park. And, I walked in on a normal conference weekend or whatever it was. And I walked in the dugout and maybe 10-something in the morning, and there was a bunch of people there already, and everybody was really eerily quiet and just kind of looked at me and looked up and looked away, and something was off, and I didn't have any clue what it was, and I didn't do anything. I just showed up. I couldn't have gotten in trouble. I just showed up. I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't late. And somebody pointed out to the field, and I looked out in left center on the fence, and somebody had painted on our black fence at Meadow Park with white paint, Hack's house. That's my nickname, by the way, is Hack. And my stomach just went, oh my God. Because I literally, I promise you, I have no idea, or I had no idea who did that. I knew it had to be some goofball friends of mine, but
so
not solicited.
You didn't jump over the fence and
I didn't paint Hack's house. I'm like, I'm gonna get. I don't know what I thought. I didn't do anything, but it had to be somebody associated with me. And the point of the story of where Lump comes in is, and the coaches didn't say a word to me. It's but we start moving around and everybody's on edge and whatever. We go out to play catch. And all of a sudden, I see Lump with a bucket of paint and a paintbrush walking towards me as I'm playing catch on the left field line. And he stops on his way because Coach Gutton, I guess, had summoned him to paint over the fence because we're on TV that day. You can't have Hack's house sticking out there. And he politely stopped and looked at me and said, F you. and then kept walking as he painted the fence. That's a true story, and I'll never forget that visual.
That was going to be on local TV.
Ned Reynolds. I don't know if you had him when you were there.
Yeah, I did.
Ned Reynolds would have been, announcing it that day.
Wow.
So that's my favorite Lump story.
That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the original conversation, which with launch angle, and it goes back to the main thesis of this episode, which is, are we overcomplicating the swing with everything that's going on with, okay, we need to match this plane or this launch angle, rather than just thinking about in general terms of we need to stay flat through the zone. We need to think about getting our shoelaces to the pitcher, so basic mechanical adjustments, rather than I got to match this number.
Well, first of all, let's forget the lower half and the shoelaces and just the swing plane stuff for a second. I listened to the guy that you had on there, and he was very adamant to match the plane, all that. And listen, at times, that's awesome. A flattish 4 to 6 degree fastball, and you want to match that, fine. The variable that wasn't talked about that I can attest to from playing the game is all this dipping and dropping and diving. Mm-hmm. And if you take any kind of swing in that ball, you got to – I have a thought that I've had for about a year, and I just told it to a couple guys in the cage this week, but I wanted to bring it up today and announce it to the world. But I like this term, you need to be a chameleon. and I made that up. So I'll patent that and make some money off that.
There you go.
But you got to be a
Make
chameleon.
T-shirts and put
And
it
what
on the store.
what I mean by a chameleon is you've got to adjust. You can't have one swing plane. You know, you can't take the same swing on a high. I mean, these days people are throwing 100 miles an hour at the top of the zone. And I'll name drop again, Jake Berger, the best guy I've ever worked with. I've talked to him recently. And Jake, for those of you who don't know, just made the big leagues with the White Sox. An incredible story, great kid, best kid I've ever worked with for lessons. And I'm a big fan. And when he was in the alternative camp last year, whatever it's called, and then AAA this year, and then and I said, what are they throwing? How are they pitching you? Now I can see how they pitch on TV. We can all see that. Sorry, but I mean, he says, well, it's a lot of high fastballs at the top of the zone, and then a lot of harsh breaking balls. Which well, you got 97, 100 miles an hour at the middle top of the zone, which is where the pitchers are liking to throw it these days, because a lot of people are tilting under. You can't.
You're not going to hit it.
You can't hit that. You can't hit that. So you take a Chris Bryant, who's a stud, but he's got that tilt swing, or a Bellinger when he had his they ain't hitting that. You know, if it drops down low or you throw a low fastball, you're right in their wheelhouse. So my point is, why can't you, when you see the high fastball, flatten out, and then maybe when it is lower in the zone, and then you're a Bryant type guy, then take your hack that launches. And another part, to me, don't have the same swing all the time, is what I'm saying. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing and a lot of people are teaching, at least professing on the internet. I know that for sure.
I think it goes on a spectrum. So back when I was playing and taking training from you, and then obviously listening to my college coaches, it was all hands. It was make sure your hands work. They just spoke about that all the time. But now everyone's trying to figure out, can we produce more velocity off of the bat, because there's a metric that's involved now. If I start talking hands, I'm going to lose clients from my personal perspective. If I start talking about home runs and driving with power, and then talk through big body parts rather than little body parts, I keep those clients. That's just my personal encounter. It could be totally different because you've been in it for 25 years.
25 years. I don't know why you would, hands to me, and I know this sounds really old school, but I'm 46, so but to me, if you don't have good hands, you can't play.
Well, you can't make contact.
But
I indirectly start speaking about that. I don't come out and say, you need to get your hands towards this pitch, that pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't talk about the first day. I talk about whatever I see that day, on a first-time client. But talking to you guys about real hitting, and if you want to hit 98 to 100, you better have good bat speed. And again, not everybody can do that. These guys on TV make a lot of money because they're special. Well, they're special because they're quick. Now, the lower half base, having great balance and having great torque and all that, of course I think it enhances. But the ironic part, and I'm not advocating that people do this, but the ironic part about my career is that I had terrible footwork and balance naturally, which I have proof of from video from when we got to Missouri State, and they videotaped us right off the bat.
I'm not going to lie, it looked pretty bad.
It's bad. I mean, there's nothing clean about it.
I don't know how you hit that many home runs in high school.
Either do I. And then
by the grace of God.
Well, and then the ironic part, if I asked you guys, for a hitter, and you're going to go lift weights, what's, in your opinion, what is the kind of known entities of what the best body areas are to lift for power and strength?
When I first started out,
I think anytime right now.
Well, first time I thought it was all legs. Now, in college, Missouri State, because it has one of the best PT programs in the area, they spoke heavily on functional movement. It was before they had this functional movement craze with
I don't even know what that is. What is that?
It's core. It's
core.
Being able to balance yourself correctly, being able to hold your weight correctly, rather than building up one set of your body. And you're not going to be able to be sound. You're not going to be able to move correctly.
It's the same with pitching. It honestly is, because building up whatever can keep you as stable as possible while also creating the most rotational acceleration as possible.
So again, to be specific, if I said that the lower half, the legs and the core, are kind of the, no pun intended, the core.
That's your
values, right?
It's your foundation, right?
It's your stability, but it's also your first component of creating rotation.
But what's interesting though is that your core is now that how I train guys, that I view the core way more important than the legs, because I feel like if you have a good core, your legs are going to come with it, because you're obviously going to have to work your legs as you work your core. So it's like it goes hand in hand.
Well, the great thing about every word you guys keep saying about that, first of all, I agree with. But here's the ironic part. I started lifting weights when I was probably 11 years old because my older brother was lifting in the basement. So me and my buddies wanted to be like him and his buddies. So we started dabbling around with lifting weights at a real young age at our house. Yeah. Too young, you know.
I mean, that's pretty young.
Yeah, but I'm telling you.
Back then, you had no idea like if that was against you.
Nope.
Yeah.
I didn't. Growth plates wasn't a term, and you know.
You didn't have.
I don't think
you didn't have the internet.
Your growth though, buddy.
Well, I think it caused some of my arm problems.
Yeah.
But here's the point: when I started lifting, we were doing bench and curls and tries and whatever we knew of, and then a few years later, I got to high school and had a weightlifting class, and they had you do the deadlift and the squats and all that stuff. I had something called Osgood-Slaughter disease in my left knee because I grew tall real fast.
Yep.
And so that all those things hurt my knee. And the squats, that bar on the back of my neck, that didn't feel too good.
Right.
With the pad, right? So long story short, I'm not making this up. I've probably done, deadlift and squats 4 or 5 times in my whole baseball career. I didn't do legs. Core wasn't a term when I played. Now,
not even at Missouri State.
Missouri State, we did abs.
But did you
not core?
But you didn't do like squats or deadlifts, or did you? Or did you just punt it? Like when they said, "Oh, we're gonna do this," and you're like, "Oh, that's not for me."
Well, I'll tell you the first thing we used to do weights with Coach Woolfork, who I believe went to Notre Dame, which is pretty cool, before school, before class. So we had weights. As far as team weights was 6 a.m.
Yeah, 6 a.m.
So you guys know me. I'm not a morning person.
You're definitely not.
So I had to show up. That doesn't mean I had to lift. I never lifted one weight. If Coach Cutton hears this or whoever else, I didn't touch a weight.
So what did you do?
I stood around and tried not to get in trouble. I spotted people. I looked around, and if they looked, I'd pull up 1 rep. I would lift after school at Plaster Arena on my own. I was lifting.
Okay. I was gonna be that guy that like hates you.
No,
because I'm working my tail off. I'm like, this dude is just sitting here.
No, I lifted my ass off, but not at 6 a.m. And then the other thing is when we were doing abs, I remember doing bicycles and crunches, and the whole team is laying on the floor in Forsyth Arena.
Oh yeah.
When we did all that stuff, I didn't do it, and when he was looking, I'd be like, oh, yeah, and I'm doing this and doing that. And when he wasn't looking, I'm like, whatever. And here's my,
You're definitely that guy.
Here was my theory. I'm like, back then, there was no correlation or no communication about abs and back problems.
So they
and
never
core.
gave you the why.
No. And
so it made no sense. You're like, why the hell am I doing this?
And this was honest to God my thought. First of all, I'm in a uniform when I'm playing. So nobody's going to see my abs, even if I get them. But my arms and my chest and my back they can see. And I had a beer from time to time, so I'm like, I'm not going to get abs. I'm a beer drinker. Like, why am I wasting my energy doing this? So here's my point, guys. Dave, I swear to you, and I'm not trying to be I think it's all. If I had to play again, I would do it just to avoid the back problems. Because I had a lot of back problems in college and in pro ball. I had a lot of oblique problems.
So that was the reason, because you didn't know the why.
I never did legs. I never did core. I had crappy balance, horrible when I got to college, and I still hit bombs. I hit 1 million bombs. You know what I'm saying?
Why do you think that is?
I had great hands. I had great hand-eye coordination.
You that talented?
I think I was. I think I was naturally talented.
Yeah.
From what I hear from my dad when I was a little bitty kid, and I know when I was a little kid, I was always the best guy. But I'm telling you, nobody wants to hear this anymore because you can't teach it. And I'm a teacher too, so I want to teach tangible things. But I'm telling you, and I'll tell any client that asks me, part of it you're born with, and the parts I mean are really your hand-eye coordination, in my opinion, and your hand speed. You every big league team, you have a 3-hitter and you have a 9-hitter. And I'm telling you, the Pujols of the world have better bat speed than the average 8 and 9-hitter. They're all working as hard, and you could argue that the 7, 8, 9 guys are working harder You know some of those guys you've played
Oh, yeah.
with they're not the best players. We've all played with those guys that were just tough guys. You know what I'm saying? And just they work out more and they.
Well, that was me. I was
thinking
I was
of
a
you.
grinder.
Yeah, you're
like
a grinder.
I wanted to outperform in practice,
Right.
and then I thought the games would take care of itself.
But
I didn't want to rely everything onto the game, because if I didn't perform, I'm sitting on the bench.
Well, that's anybody.
But not to the degree of you, though,
Well,
because you had that history behind
But
you.
I always had success.
Yeah.
So, but my point is, I didn't do legs. I didn't do the things that you're now supposed to do. And again, if I went back again, I would do them. And I have my own son who plays, my 17-year-old Eddie. He does them all the time. His legs are bigger than mine. Right now, his legs are huge. But here's the deal. And I love my own kid. He can't hit like me. Mm-hmm. He's got better legs. He's got better core. He's been taught since he was born by me.
Yeah, but
he's got a better swing than I ever had. But you have to have. There's a natural Vlad Guerrero Jr. Those guys are just special, and I'm not saying I was special like them. I wasn't. But to the areas that I played until I got to about AA, AAA. AAA is the only place I didn't get to play. But even in AA, whether it was Pat Burrell or this guy, I was right on par.
But your swing was not like a typical swing. It like if we pulled up video right now and you compared it to a major league swing right now,
it's a disaster. Until Coach Gutton got a hold of me, and that's why I praise him every time I can. Keith Gutton, head coach, I wouldn't have got half as far as I did without him not cleaning me up. I couldn't have kept going the way I was swinging. No way.
you don't think so?
There's too much. No, I had a very, very long stride.
So you would have been screwed on breaking balls.
Yeah, well, they told me up front. I vividly remember this stuff because I had never been taught before. So it was very, up front in my mind. But they said, listen, they throw a lot harder here than they do. It's not 75 to 85 or 70 to 80. It's 80-something to 90-something here. Mm-hmm. And I had this very long, lunging, dragging the back foot out in front stride. So they said, you're going to be late. And when you start cheating to get quicker for these 90-ish fastballs, then you're going to be early in the breaking ball. So this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So the long story short is why I went mechanically from a long stride to ended up being a no stride, which ironically, again, we talked about Bill Miller, but he was doing that his senior year as a switch hitter. He was doing the Pujols heel to the heel end before Pujols was even famous. And they said, come watch him. We're going to have you do this in practice for a while and see if we can knock the stride down over time.
But that's a really good point, though, is because if you look at Albert Pujols, not many people can duplicate his swing when he was in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. That looked very uncomfortable.
Yeah, high elbow and
high
no
elbow.
stride.
It just looked like he was so stiff.
But he's natural.
That's what that's what I'm saying.
He's just a stud.
And now he's trying to figure out later in his career he has to get a leg kick because he realizes that talent that he had is definitely diminished.
And that's what happens
naturally.
That's what happens to all of them. Your bat speed goes down. That's a great point. They're trying to compensate for their lack of the. I'm just telling you. I had a kid yesterday, 2 days ago. I just met him, little 7.5, almost 8-year-old, and I don't know who he is, but I said, I play with this guy that knows you, and they recommended you. I'm like, okay. He comes in. I'm like,
just crushing.
He's 7. He's almost 8. I told his dad. I said, hey, he's got some hands. He's got some pop to him. Anybody, in my opinion. Anybody can be taught how to do a lower half function. Seal off the front side, firm front side, torque the back side. And if you lift legs a ton and if you do a bunch of core work, you guys could torque and turn and do better leg work than I could. But no offense, I can hit it harder and further than you in my prime, no matter what you did.
I would agree
in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so what I'm telling you is all of my own kid, keep doing it. Do it. But,
you just don't know what's going to happen, though, in 2 to 3 years.
Hitting the ball hard will never go out of fashion.
Yeah.
Hitting the ball hard. Now they have a name for it.
But what I'm saying is from a career standpoint, because I was a junior college guy, and in high school I wasn't a hitter. I was good at it, but I wasn't amazing at it. Mm-hmm. And I went to junior college, figured out switch hitting, and then I started having power on both sides of the plate and being a guy that could pop off 6 home runs in a college season, which is what I ended up doing my senior year. But I think a lot of guys, when they swing, they're seeing these big league guys and seeing all these metrics and Twitter, and they're like, why can't I do that? And my biggest thing is don't quit on it. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, not at all. But they're not that powerful yet. So even for instance, I saw this one thing somebody sent me. and the guy was talking about the metrics and the launch angle and the angle of the ball and all this stuff. And he said, all that's great, but if you can't hit it over whatever this magic number was, 92 miles an hour, it ain't going over a 400-foot fence or 330. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so you can have a kid who does this and launches and kills it, and it dies 30 feet from the track, and then it's no good. You know what I'm saying? So and maybe in 4 years he will hit it over.
Well, you know what doesn't go out of style is doubles.
Well, and I'll make it simpler than that, because this is what I say about 700 times a day in lessons, and I'll say it to you and I'll say it to anybody. Line drives. Line drives. Hit line drives. Dave Roberts, I'm going to say this again. Go back to being a hit collector. Hit line drives into the gaps. If they start carrying over the fence, so be it. There's another thing I like. This is from Dave Roberts. He was a hitter first, and then slug followed. Slug meaning slugging percentage and hitting for power.
Yeah.
This is Dave. Forget Steve Hacker. Forget Spiker and Dave Berkby. Who cares? This is Dave Roberts. I've always liked Dave Roberts, but I like when he stole the base and helped beat the Yankees, because I don't like the Yankees, but I don't like the Red Sox either. But I'll take the Red Sox over the Yankees, because the Yankees have 700 championships and I can't watch it anymore. But this is a big leaguer, not me, who's saying he was a hitter first, then the slug followed. And this is then they go on, and he says, this is quotes from him and the head hitting coach at the Dodgers, which the name is up here. They have 3 hitting coaches, which I thought was interesting. But the point is, this is a quote again, okay? So you guys I can put this up and you can prove to your guys I'm not making this up. I just want him to focus on being a good hitter. Be a good hitter first. Be a doubles guy. He's grinding, but he's got the mindset. If he's got the approach of being a doubles guy, that'll benefit him far more than feeling you have to hit a homer, so now you're back. I think that consistently going forward, he'd be best served to be a hit collector, driving in runs, using the whole field. And then this is my favorite part. I believe that the mindset and the use of the whole field, a little flatter path, I think it will lead to success. I have to fight.
But
I have to fight the new age for the last 10 years or so of all this BS swinging up. Fine, I swung up too, by the way. When I call it a time and a place.
And sometimes you are.
Yeah.
Sometimes you naturally are.
But if it's 3-1, I'm taking a gamble.
But let me ask you a question, because here's the
now you're hearing me.
Yeah, well, and I'm not a hitting coach. I've coached a lot of good hitters, and I've heard you talk forever.
But Dave, first of all, you're a pitcher, and in my opinion, if pitchers don't know anything about hitters, you're screwed. And if I don't know anything about pitchers, I'm screwed. I like your opinions, so let's hear it.
So you've worked with youth guys, 18 and under, your whole career. Mm-hmm. If you started, how many of those guys, if you were, let's say you were a launch angle guy, you fell into the craze that a lot of guys did, how many of those guys are talented enough to even understand it or do it, in your opinion?
They're not strong enough or powerful enough or good enough, most of them. No offense to them.
And how can they understand that? And then how can they adjust? So you say 0, because I would say 0.
Yeah, I don't, but... No, but I've never talked about it all the time.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, in my opinion, 0. If I started talking about that and talking about metrics, and you got to match this plane, they're not talented enough to do it.
Okay? And by the way,
it goes back to basic needs.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then secondarily, let's say you get to the big leagues and you get to that level, or minor leagues, where you can work and you can understand that if that's your thing, Bellinger. How in the world are you going to be able to adjust when a pitcher sees that? Because they're very talented and they see you're doing that, and then they're going to, what you just said.
That's why I say it's not sustainable.
Now you can't beat it.
You can't swing. You got to be chameleon. You got to adjust. And what you started saying, 3-1. Okay, here we go. 0-2. Not so much.
And then you're Matt Carpenter.
You're Matt Carpenter. Let me give you 3 names that I wrote down for this conversation. Chris Davis, Matt Carpenter, Cody Bellinger. You guys hear about Chris Davis the last few days?
Yeah, he's retired.
He's retired. He had this breakout 50-something home runs. I looked up his stats today before I came, so I don't look like an idiot. And even in the next year, he had some home runs, but he hit 196, I think. You know what I'm saying? They figure out how to pitch you. They're always going to be adjusting. That's what pitching coaches do.
Always.
You can't have one approach.
Yeah.
You can't have one swing. And I'm going to tell you,
I saw that with Luke Voigt. He was he tried to hit a whole bunch of home runs in Double-A because he was in Springfield. And if people don't know, Springfield is a launching pad during the summer. In the spring, it's not, but in the summer, it is. And he played for the Springfield Cardinals, and he just hit a crap ton of home runs. And then when he got to the big leagues, I didn't have any conversations with him on this, but when he got to the big leagues, he toned down his leg kick, and he actually got a little bit flatter.
You know what's funny is, and he might not even remember this, I see Luke occasionally. We both went to Missouri State.
Yep.
And he works out at our facility sometimes. But I had 2 lessons with Luke in my career. He was always around the facility, mostly hitting with his friends. I saw him a handful of times with Torrey Tyson throwing BP to him.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 lessons. I bet you money if we went back in the books on ESOF Planner, you could see those 2 lessons because I knew of the guy and he was a big, strong guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, the one that I remember vividly was he came in after, I believe, his first season in short A. And I didn't know his swing a ton, but I saw him around the facility enough to know a little bit about it. But he came in after his season with the Cardinals, and he had this big, huge leg kick. And I said, I don't remember you doing that, when I saw you in college that one time and just seeing you around the facility. He goes, no, one of the hitting coaches put it in or asked me to put it in to get me more power. And I remember, like it was yesterday, saying to him, I said, hey, I don't believe personally that big leg kicks equal power. I don't think you have to have big leg kicks to equal power. I think you need weight shift, and sometimes big leg kicks can introduce that, but so can taps, and so can minor leg lifts. You don't need your knee in your chest to hit for power.
Right.
Otani, okay, let's put a video of him up there.
Well, during that time though, Jose Bautista was a big name. That was the Bautista era.
Yeah, and I'm not blaming Luke. I'm just saying what I told him in Cage 1 on a random lesson is I said, in my opinion, if you keep up this big, it's very hard to time. And he didn't hit a bunch of home runs anyway with it.
Yeah.
I said the best thing I can tell you to do is get your foot down quicker and tone down this leg kick. And again, he probably didn't even remember that lesson. I remember special guys because you don't get to see a lot of them.
Well, they're different.
They're different. Totally, he was different.
You can tell when you get a guy in there, like that guy's different.
Now I see him on the field with this little what I call a hover tap.
Oh, that's what I call
he's right by the ground.
I really love that.
And again, if I had 0.5% to do with it, good. I'm glad I helped. But if he probably don't remember it, but I'm telling you that's what I told him.
But one thing about
that's what I told him.
One thing about Luke though, because obviously playing with him and then seeing his career and following his career, he is a master at adjusting and being a chameleon, like you said, because he wants to win and he'll do whatever he can to win.
Right.
That's just in his nature, and he'll find a way to do it. And I mean, he was a catcher in college,
right? And
then he figured out like, oh, I can't do catching because I blew out my labrum, and now he's playing first base, and you can see when he throws, he can't throw over top.
Right.
But he's just a master at being good at adjusting and being a chameleon.
And on that same exact note, this is one I think about literally every day, and I don't think I've ever heard an analyst when breaking down swings or talking about hitting talk about this. Maybe they have, but what nobody takes into consideration is how are you feeling lately at the plate?
Yeah.
Are you hot? Or are you 0 for your last 30? And I can promise you, I don't care if it's playing in short A ball or triple A, when I'm not seeing the ball well or not hitting well, the launch angle, which they didn't call it back then, but whatever, trying to hit a home run was the furthest thing from my mind. I was just trying not to strike out. And please know that these current big leaguers in general still feel the same way. I still see articles where the guy's like, hey, I've been struggling lately. I'm just trying to put the ball in play hard. And then they get back on track and hit 6 home runs in 6 days. Fine. Kyle Schwarber a few years ago when he played for the Cubs, who I've always been impressed with. From the first, I heard about him from Gary Russo. You remember Gary Russo?
Yeah, I actually saw him yesterday or 2 days
this
ago.
week.
So Gary told me about him when I was still working with and seeing Gary, and I think
Gary works for Blast Motion, everybody. So we have a really good relationship with Blast Motion, so we get to see those guys on a consistent basis. But
Gary played at MICDS, and then he went on to play at some JUCO, and I think he went to Miami of Ohio.
Yep.
Somewhere along that path, I saw Gary, and he mentioned Schwarber. I don't know if it was before he got up or he said, have you seen this guy yet in the big leagues? I had never heard of him. But that's why I paid attention to the guy. Long story short is when I see Schwarber to this day, he's one of the guys that it looks like every time he swings, I feel like he's going to hit a home run. Not that he's swinging up or just he's just a powerful, short, he just looks like a monster to me.
Yep.
And I've seen him go on home run tears being a Cardinal fan and watching the Cubs. But the point of the story is years ago, and this is all could be proved, but he was leading the Cubs in home runs one year early in the season, a couple month or two in, and got sent down to AAA. And anybody listening or you guys not having that in your mind, because I didn't tell you I was going to talk about it, you're like, what are you talking about? Why would he get? Let me ask you. I'll ask you guys. What if you don't remember that part of history? What can you surmise? Why would, in God's name, would he get sent down if he was leading the Cubs in home runs?
He was striking out.
He was hitting 174.
Yeah. Or his defense was really bad.
And every time the Cardinals would play him, I'd pop the Cubs in and root against them like I always do, them and the Yankees. If I'm just watching a random game, and they're talking about, well, he's hitting home runs, but gosh, he struck out 9 out of 10 times. Can you keep this? And I'm like, we're in the new age now.
Yep.
And some of these coaches don't care.
Yeah.
But I mean, how about Bellinger? He's not getting hits.
Well, I just think about how many at bats in a professional season?
About 550.
And then a really strong season is
40.
Is 40 home runs.
Do the math.
That's the percentage is the probability of you.
I don't know if you guys are being nice to me today, but everything you're saying is my thoughts. And when you say, guys, it's a lot of home runs and 40 and again, even if a guy has, I was just talking last night Dylan Carlson. Mm-hmm. I just brought him up just because I watched the Cardinal game and he has 12 home runs. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about his durability. And they said, boy, for a 22-year-old, and by the way, 22, I was in A-ball. So he's better than I ever was. So I'm not knocking these guys. I'm not whatever. I'm not knocking 12 home runs. Yeah. But the guy's he's had to have 400 at-bats. Just do the math. The Cardinals are over their 100th game. I hear Dan McLaughlin say it all the time. Oh, now it's game 110, and we're 3/4 of the way. Well, he's played every day roughly. Mm-hmm. Well, how many at-bats do you get if you're batting first or second, which he's batted all year? You get about 4. So he's got to be over 400 at-bats, and he's got 12 home runs. I always think about it this way. Let's say he did something unprecedented, and a guy starts out the season with, let's say, 12 home runs. 12 home runs in his first 12 at-bats. It's almost impossible, probably, right?
Yep.
But let's say we could foresee the future, or we go in the past and we say, well, he had 12 home runs, but he had 550 at-bats. But if you spurt him out, it doesn't sound that bad, and it's like, hey. But my point is, if you hit 12 home runs your first 12 at-bats, and then you had 480 to go, what if you didn't get another hit? What are you going to do for me in between the home runs? Yeah. And I'm telling you, if you take I'm a home run hitter. If you take the mindset, in my opinion, of I got to hit 20 home runs, and you can't hit 20, 30 home runs and then not fill in the blanks. Yeah. You just hope for some other stuff. You got to do it the other way around, in my opinion. You got to blast the ball and drive baseballs, and then 20 of them go out. Mm-hmm. And I know La Russa, I have articles where La Russa says the same. He goes, Pujols. Yep. La Russa would say, Pujols isn't a home run hitter. He's a line drive hitter. Mm. He hits a ton of line drives, and about 30 of them a year go out.
And he just slightly gets under the ball.
And that's what Gutton told me. Yep. And I'm not comparing myself to Pujols, but that's the same exact quotes theory that I was taught, and I still believe in it to this day.
I have to think that it's getting back to that, though, Hack, because it went away. The game went away from it for a while. I mean, for whatever the game got, and data's never going to go away. Like, there's going to be more data points on players in 5 years than ever before.
Yep.
But at some point, some guy walked in and said, if we hit X amount of home runs or we do this or we slug this, then we will win X amount more games because we will produce runs more. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the whole game shifted, but I think in a wrong way to where then that coincided with the launch angle phase.
First of all, I agree. Right? I think you're exactly correct. But and the analysts and the Moneyball type stuff. And I've never seen the movie, but I know exactly what it's about. Yeah. And I've heard, but all those analytics that say, well, we can win, and that's how people build teams and who they want to get. Yeah. What I'm talking about, right? I've always been the player's perspective. Yeah. And I'm telling you this, and this is just my opinion. But if you go up there and start thinking about 6-degree angles and matching planes, for sure. And boy, if I don't hit 10 home runs, you're done.
Paralysis by analysis.
You can't live like that. And if you tell me one player this quote and said, well, I was up there and I changed my angle from 6 to 20 because I saw the slider, I'm like, what? This is all happening in 0.4 of a second.
Right.
And you can work on the cage and you can talk about it and you can use video and all that. And I'm a big video fan. Some guys swing up more. I mean, I'll give you one. Freddie Freeman. I don't know how he baffles me. And I like the guy. He's a great guy. He seems like the nicest guy in the world. I have never seen that harsh of an uppercut consistently on a player in my life.
Because he's a freak athlete.
That's what I'm saying.
Probably unbelievable hand-eye coordination.
If I taught a kid, if I did that, I wouldn't have made it to college.
Well, also his leverage is a lot different. His arms are a lot longer.
But I don't know how he does
Only
it.
Freddie Freeman can do that.
I mean,
that's been my problem with the commentary and people talking like that forever and pushing launch angle or pushing home runs is because then it's natural in terms of game adoption. The younger guys are going to try to do it, but they can't do it.
Well, on the same note, Dave, is there's people, and I would mention it, there's people locally in this area in St. Louis that are teaching every kid that walks into place. Swing up, hit home runs.
That's where I think
that makes me sick to my stomach.
That's where this conversation gets a little bit different, is that there's one thing of knowing the information, but it's being able to pass on the information that helps that person.
Right.
I am a huge advocate, and I think you might disagree with me on this. I'm a huge advocate of knowing launch angle and knowing what it is and how to use it. But I am not an advocate of just literally when a person comes in and just talking about launch angle. I want to use that tool when it is appropriate. And the probability of me using that is not that much. I've probably had, in my teaching career, again, it's not as long as you, I would say I probably had maybe 3 or 4 conversations on launch angle.
It's funny you mentioned that. And first of all, I believe knowledge is power. So I want to know everything everybody's saying. I want to hear it, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be a sheep and follow along. And I'm also not a guy who's just going to go against everything that's new. That's not the case. But, ironically, you would think it would come up and we'd have to fight it all the time. I don't think I've ever had anybody bring it up for the most part as far as, hey, are you going to teach my kid to launch angle and swing home runs? And, this has never happened. But if it did, I literally, I've thought about this. I overthink a lot of things, and if that happened, I never met a guy that said, "Well, I thought you were going to teach this," and I'm like, "No, I don't believe in that. I believe at times, if this kid was bigger, when he gets a high changeup, hit it out of the fence, over the fence. But even if it's a high changeup or a hanging breaking ball, but I've got a 5'6", 120-pound kid, I'm not telling him to launch it because it ain't going anywhere. Let's be realistic. But I love the information, but I'm not gonna teach the same thing to every kid. Yep. So I'm to tell, the Jake Bergers of the world, we talked a million times, just hit bombs, hit line drives. But when you get that right pitch, let it loose. And just like you said, you get the 3-1, you get the 2-0, you get the 0-0, and you know this guy's been throwing fastball all day. And when I'm hot, I got a little tilt to me. I've done some launch angle.
If the guess is going to be right,
or
if I've baited the pitcher to throw that pitch to me later in the count.
But there's a time and a place, and in my opinion, and if your time and place is always, which I think is not sustainable, you got Chris Davis retired. I didn't know he was still playing, and God love him, he's made millions.
Sure.
And I'm not knocking a guy. I'm just saying
Chris Davis is still playing.
He retired 2 days ago.
Oh, you mean? Oh, okay, yeah.
For the Orioles.
Yeah.
That was on the news. I keep paying attention. I'm like, retired? Where's he been? Chris Davis is done, and I don't know if he's played in a game in the last few years. So that was not sustainable. The 53 home runs was not sustainable because he never came close again. Matt Carpenter. When Matt Carpenter came in the league, I couldn't have been a bigger fan.
Oh, yeah.
I still like the guy in TCU, and he was not supposed to make it. He's made millions. Awesome. But he broke, I'll never forget this, he broke Stan Musial's doubles record.
Yeah, it was awesome.
For anybody listening, if you're a St. Louis or a baseball historian, to break Stan Musial's doubles record is unbelievable. I remember watching this guy.
That's a lot of doubles.
2013, I've memorized his stats. He was 313, 50-something doubles. Broke Stan Musial's record.
He beat down the left center fence.
I've never seen somebody spray line.
Yeah. It was unbelievable.
It was different than Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn and Wade Boggs are two of my favorite guys, even though that wasn't my type of hitter. It was just a beauty thing to watch.
Yeah.
But this guy was hitting line drives down both lines. That's how you get a bunch of doubles.
Yep.
And then I still think, from reading the articles and reading what I read, the whole thing I heard about when he started trying to hit home runs is Matt Holliday, that played for the Cardinals, got hurt. And I don't know if he was joking or if they were serious, but I've read articles that he said, hey, somebody's got to fill in and hit some home runs. He goes, you can hit home runs. So he started trying to launch a little bit. God forbid it worked. And all of a sudden, a few years ago, what a total dichotomy of a year. He started off that year, it was freezing outside in the whole country for some reason. And I remember one day watching the Cardinals, and a month in or so, and Matt Carpenter was hitting 1-something. And just couldn't buy a hit. It was freezing out. He was hitting into bad luck. They were starting to put a shift on. It was not conducive to hitting. And the articles, and this was when Mike Matheny was the coach, and I remember one of the articles, how long can Matheny keep starting this guy? They were wanting his head. They were, in essence, they were wanting him to be benched.
Yep.
Well, next thing you know, he turns it around. He gets hot. It warms up. I remember a series in Wrigley. He probably hit 6 home runs in Wrigley in one series. Next thing you know, he has 38 home runs or something like that, and he's in the MVP candidacy.
Yeah, I remember that.
Then he gets this big extension. And you guys live here, so you know what's happened next. He's now not starting. He hasn't been starting for 2 years. Tommy Edmonds took his job, a rookie who doesn't hit home runs.
Yeah.
Well,
If you want to talk, I'm convinced, and I have articles where he says, I can't do this anymore. I couldn't sleep last year. I got to go. It's too late. He's lost his way, from what I see, because it's the same damn swing.
Well, you know how that pressure is in pro ball.
Of course it is.
The pressure of...
It's not sustainable to do this.
That's my point. It's exactly what you said. The game always adjusts. I talk to pitchers all the time. I'm like, it's always, whatever you're watching, it's a cat and mouse game. We're always trying to figure out what you got, and you're always trying to figure out what we got. And whenever you figure something out and start beating us, we're going to try to do something different to beat you. The problem is he put like 100,000 swings into one swing. And then when pitchers figured out how to get that swing out, do you think that a hitter can just go back to what he was doing?
That's the article. The article I had, he goes, I'm going back. It was Lance Berkman. That was the article. Lance Berkman, this is in the offseason. The Cardinals writers have nothing to write about. And he said they saw each other because Texas area or something, because he went to Rice and he went to TCU.
Yep.
And the article was like, what the blank happened to your swing? From Lance Berkman to Matt Carpenter. That's what and so they started working together and working it out. Apparently it's too late because it's the same swing. And what got him was precisely what you said. They got a book on him. Yeah. And then the shift.
Yeah.
There's guys sitting out in right center.
For
He
sure.
can't hit it over there anymore.
No, it's not capable. And when you put that amount of swings into one motion, and then a pitcher figures you can't switch back quickly. It takes you 50,000 swings to get out of that.
Be a chameleon.
Yeah,
hit line drives.
Exactly correct.
Hit line drives and be a chameleon. And when you're hot and they hang one, or you're just hot, hit the low slider out of the park.
Yeah.
But when you're here's my advice: when you're struggling, just put a barrel on it and try to get a hit. And I'll tell you what Glenn Hubbard told me when I came back from that broken finger in '97. I was terrible. I was a slow starter anyway, and I missed 28 games with a broken fingertip. And I came back, and I couldn't get a hit. I just couldn't get a hit. I hadn't seen live pitching, and Glenn Hubbard, we called him Hub. Hub came up to me and goes, Hack, he goes, I see you're struggling. He goes, do me a favor. Just try to hit a ground ball to the right side. And I'm right-handed for you that don't know. He goes, just see something deep. I'm out in front on breaking balls. I'm late on. I couldn't find my rhythm, couldn't find my timing. He goes, just hit a ground ball to the right side. And nobody's going to talk about that, or nobody's going to do a podcast about hitting a ground ball to the right side to get yourself back on. But see the ball deep, but we are right now. See the ball deep and hit a ground ball. And when I finally did that, and I'm surmising some of this, it's been 20-something years, but he's probably like, great job. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. That year, and I was on this Macon Braves team, which a lot of these guys ended up being AAA big league guys. Jason Marquis was on that team, and we had some studs, and we had I think we had 4 or 5 pitchers thrown over 90, and we had a really good. We won both. For any of you who know minor league systems work, there's 2 halves. There's a first half and a second half, and if you win the first half, at least it used to be. I think it still is.
It still is.
If you win the first half of the 72 games or whatever it is, 71 games, you're in the playoffs 4 months later. Mm-hmm. You could go 0-72 in the second half. Which is really kind of odd.
I didn't know that.
That's how it worked.
I actually think that's more entertaining for a fan.
Well, it's just funny that you could go 0-72 and then
celebrate after that 72.
Yeah, we're going to the playoffs.
That would be I wish MLB would do that because it would make the trade deadline even that more interesting.
There you go.
Like do you know what Ted Lasso is? The show
we have it on our list of things to watch. Stacey and I.
Phenomenal.
That's what I've heard.
You'll love it.
That's what I've heard.
Awesome. It's really good. But the Premier League, how they do it is if you don't win if you're last place in the league, you get dropped down to another league.
Yeah.
I wish MLB would do that so they would stop. I
think the owners would vote that out real quick.
I know, but I mean, as a fan, it is really annoying when they just literally the Cubs.
The
Pirates
just
sell
out.
The Pirates might have been in the single A league right now.
Oh yeah, I know.
It's called a fire sale.
Yes.
But let me remark back real quick to this Macon year, because the Macon year in '97, we won both halves. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we were that good. I mean, our team was that good, so we won both half titles.
Do you get something special for that?
Well, we went in the playoffs and lost in the first round and went home to the Yankees. But the coolest part about it, and I'll finish the point of the hitting part of it in a second, but the coolest part about it was, I don't know if it was after the first half win or the second half win, But you know how in the big leagues, when a team wins to go to the playoffs or the World Series, they put the plastic around the things and they pour beer on everybody and champagne. Yeah. We did that.
Oh, nice.
Only time in my life we ever
Halfway
did that.
through the season.
And watching I can't remember if it was the halfway one or the end of the season one. But we came in after a game, and I guess we clinched, and all this plastic was up, and literally tubs of beer and champagne, and Glenn Hubbard was one of my favorite coaches. He didn't cuss, didn't drink, which was just not like most minor league people or coaches, which is fine, each his own. But all the coaches came out one at a time. Our trainer set it up or something, and they'd come out one at a time, and he'd announce them, and then we're pouring champagne and beer on our coaches. Some of these dudes, I mean, Marquis, I think, was 18, by the way. You know, I mean, because he was a young stud that came up early, but that was one of the coolest things I've ever done, because it was actually like you see on TV.
Yeah, for sure.
But the point is, when I came back from this broken finger, I couldn't get a hit. All my hitting coach is doing is just hit a ground ball the right side. Maybe you'll get back on track. I'm not saying I literally was going to quit, but it crossed my mind that maybe I should, as dumb as it sounds, you know, but you just, when you're struggling at hitting, I don't know. Or if,
you just start.
What's a black hole?
I had no
you just
confidence.
start going down. It's like quicksand.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
I mean, but here's the weird thing. I wasn't the first few rounder. I was 14th round, which isn't bad, but I wasn't some top stud. I kept batting fourth. My whole life, I batted third or fourth for the most part.
Yeah, so they kept on running you out there.
Yeah, so and whether the brass told Matt or Snitker or Hubbard, I don't know. It wouldn't have been Hubbard, but the point is, it was even more embarrassing because I'm right in the middle of a great team. They didn't. So I remember watching when I was hurt, and I'm like, they don't even need me, right? Well, here's the ironic part. Maybe I hit a couple ground balls the right side or whatever because I got back on track. And these numbers are all on the internet. But I ended up that year where I contemplated quitting the game. I not like literally went in there and think I'm going to quit, but I'm like, should I stop? Because this is not, I'm 21, or I'm like, this isn't working. I got a bunch of 19-year-olds that are hitting better than me on this team, or 20-year-olds. I ended up hitting 324, which I think was fourth in the league, which is pretty good for no infield hits. 34 home runs, 34 doubles, 121 RBIs. I led the league in almost every category. And won MVP of my team.
How long did your streak
last? I had 10 home runs in 10 games at one point.
No, I'm talking about your failing streak.
Well, by the All-Star break, I started getting back on track gradually. I do remember this. They had an All-Star game and everything, just like the minor leagues, major leagues. At the All-Star game, I went home because I wasn't on the All-Star team. At the All-Star break, I think I had 7 or 8 home runs, and I ended up with 34. I remember literally the last month of the season, I'd go out to play. I either DH'd or played first. Almost every minor league team has 2 first basemen, and one of them DHs. So me and this other dude, Jim Shar, would split off. When I'd go out to first to start a game and to throw the ball around and Macon, the other team's first base coach and the umpire often would go, "Hey, Hack, you play the same teams over and over. What are you still doing here? You've hit 20 home runs in the last 3." I'm like, why aren't they moving you up to Durham, high A Durham Bulls? I'm like, I don't know. Well, I think we were on a playoff run, but you know what I'm saying? I remember like this. It was almost like a joke. Yeah. So the point is, what started out as a joke, like I remember one game. I wish I could find it on the internet. I either struck out 4 times or 5. I don't remember. I don't think I touched the ball that night. I couldn't get a foul ball. I was so off from that injury and slow starter.
Yeah.
And to go from one extreme of like, should I quit this game, to, you know, leading the league in almost every category and being MVP of that team, you know.
So
I wasn't trying to, when I was slumping, I wasn't trying to hit home runs, my brother. I was trying to get a freaking single. A single.
What I love about that situation though, and that coach telling you just hit the ball at second base. Who even cares? You get out, you hit a 5 hopper. It doesn't matter. Is he was trying to get you back to simple thoughts, simplicity.
Yes,
simplicity is easy, right? And it's something that a player can rely on to have success. Well, when you're struggling, you're overcomplicating the situation. I've talked about that for years with players. All of my teachings, and same with you, and because I've known you for a long time, all revolve around keeping things simple, because that's something you can be consistent with. And that's the topic of today. Like I've stolen something you said a long time ago, because I think you got tired of, you were in the dugout watching one of our games and 2-0, 3-1 counts, and kids were not swinging at fastballs down the middle, or they were late or whatnot. And I think you told me that when you were in the Braves system that they would fine you if you were late on those counts of fastballs. I don't know if that was true or not.
The story, I know exactly what you're talking about. It wasn't fined. We got fined for a lot of stuff, which is one of them that's funny to me real quick about the fine is you couldn't wear Oakleys in the Braves system. Oakleys were big back then. They literally had this big crate of these old-time, like looked like from the 50s, these flip glasses for the outfielders.
Yeah.
But then you're watching the Braves on TV, Andrew Jones and these guys, you know. But anyway, Paul Runge, roughest coach I ever had. I'll leave it at that. He was a different guy, and he was my first coach ever in the minors, which was a tough way to start. And within the first week or two, we were playing in Yakima, Washington, and because I'd never had a coach talk to me like this. Which teach their own, but most of my coaches were pretty reasonable. They get mad, but they wouldn't yell at me for something like this. But anyway, 3-0, and he gives me the green light. And I took a fastball, and this is 1995, but I'm telling you, it was outer. I remember it, because I remember what happened right after. It was outer, and you know, I wanted to jack something middle pull, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, next pitch I walk, harmless at bat, I thought. And went to first. Somebody grounded out for the third out, force out at second. So I'm walking from second to go back to first base. Runge meets me by the pitcher's mound. I give him my helmet, and he goes, "What the hell was that?" And I go, "What?" He goes, "The 3-0. I gave you the green light." I said it was outside. He goes, "In the Brave system, we're not effing paying you to walk." I could show you on the field in Yakima, Washington, where he said that. It was kind of the vibe of the late stuff, but that was the exact thing that happened. And he goes, "We're not paying you to effing walk."
And then 10 years later, people are getting paid to get walked.
I just to this day, if I took a cookie middle in, I get it, but it was out. I didn't hit a home run to right with Wood my first week in the minors. But he, you know, but it's the same.
But then that goes back to that philosophy, though. That's what makes baseball so interesting, is that no matter if you're in the organization of the Braves, the Cardinals, each coach has their own thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have an overarching thought. And then like me and you, we agree, and then we also disagree on some things.
And that's healthy. But to have somebody that hard, I mean, Gutton, I was there for 3 years. I knew this guy for 5 days or a week. You know, and he didn't give a shit. But you know, Gutton I knew for 3 years as far as playing for him. Mm-hmm. I met him when I was 15 or 16. He'd more calmly explain, like, "Hey, dude, what's going on?" And that's kind of how I function in the cage. But you know, everybody's got their own style. Teach his own. Teach his own.
I'm big on taking the karate and taekwondo philosophy into hitting.
I don't know what that is. What you got?
So different belts, like. There's certain criteria that you have to meet before you can move on to the next topic, right?
Like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. Like you say, yeah, perfect.
Whoa, Berkby, that was awesome. Whose hierarchy of needs?
Maslow.
I think I have heard of that, but that reminds me of college. That
think of it as a pyramid. Like you have to, in order to get to the second, third level, like the level of expertise is what we talk about. It's like, you know, I use it on the pitching side all the time. Well, I'm not talking spin rate or velocity or anything else. If you can't step in the same direction twice in a row, like there's no point.
Which is my point to this whole conversation of being complicated, is that metrics are very shiny because I can literally see it and it's tangible, and then I can put it into play. But having that information to a novice is not a great situation, whether you are a novice coach or a novice player. And you see a lot of novice coaches on Twitter who claim that they're experts because they can say
spat off information.
Well, yeah, they can use really big words. If you, one of my favorite quotes, I forgot who quoted this, but if you end up debating somebody and they are using big words that you do not know, or a majority of the audience doesn't know, it's that they don't know and they're hiding behind those big words.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My point here is that the hierarchy of needs, or if you want to use the karate side of things where you get a black belt and you add in a red belt inside of that, where do you think the fundamentals, where do you think people need to be focusing majority of their time for that 7 to, say, 14U age group?
Well, first of all,
Without let's just say it's the talent is the same across the board. It's not a special dude, not a guy not like your 7-year-old that has unbelievable hands, like the genetics are just there. I'm just talking about in general terms that someone wants to learn baseball.
The first things I try to teach those guys after watching them and seeing what their if there's some gaping hole problem, I'll go right to that, saying, hey, you're stepping out, or let's try to fix that. But in general, my big things are no different than what Gutton taught us at Missouri State when we got there. Play coverage, balance, some concept of hitting the ball to all fields. Play coverage is one of the most interesting ones to me. Everybody knows in baseball there's a million stances. People mimic. You can find on YouTube somebody mimicking a bunch of stances. We had a guy, Mark DeRosa, that I played with, who's now on TV a lot, and a really funny guy. And he used to do imitations of stances, including mine, because mine was pretty goofy, but I wasn't famous. But he did Will Clark. He did the best Will Clark I've ever seen with facial expressions. It was really funny. Everybody knows the stances are different, but the proximity to the plate, that it's one of the things in hitting that baffles me. That it's so interesting to me to see how varied that is. And I'll give you a couple examples. Goldschmidt and Molina, in my estimate of watching on TV, are at least 10 to 14 inches off the white line that's near the plate. And then you got on the same team with the same hitting coach and whatever, you've got lately Harrison Bader. I don't know what he's changed recently, but he's on the inside of that white line. He's right on top of the plate. But Dylan Carlson's real close to the plate. Jim Edmonds, I love Jim Edmonds. We've met him a few times at the facility. We've got to do a class with his son. And he just seems like a cool guy. But on TV, listening to him announce those games, I just feel like I've heard or said those things a billion times. He's seeing the same stuff I'm seeing for the most part. And the other day I was watching, and Dylan Carlson is a couple inches off that white line, which for a 6-foot-something male adult is pretty close. I've got plenty of 7, 8-year-olds who are 4 inches off that white line in the same type of setup in the cage. Anyway, so Dylan Carlson's pretty close. He gets 2 strikes. This is against the Indians about a week ago or so. Gets 2 strikes on him, and then all of a sudden he scoots up, and his toes are on the white line. And I'm sitting there at home watching. I'm going, my God, he's right on top of it. And I swear to you, Edmonds goes, wow, he just got right on top of the plate, didn't he? I mean, I'm like, oh my God. He just says, but my point is, forget what I like. That's not the point. But there's guys that are crowding it, like Rizzo and Carpenter and Carlson. And then you got guys like Ryan Braun and Molina, who are 12 inches off, and the average kid that comes in, when I went to college, I just kind of eyed it. The average kid that comes in from 7 to 14, to answer your question, they just stand somewhere. They just eye it. I think I remember Coach Gutton saying at Missouri State, we don't trust your eyes. So we're doing a setup. We call them barrel checks, and we started setting stuff up. And it wasn't everybody's in the same spot, but we had to do this check, which I teach to this day. And it's just, plate coverage is one of the first things I want to talk about, because if you're right on top of the plate, there's consequences. Unless you're special. Justin Turner's right on top of the plate. Justin Turner, I'd love to meet him and talk to him.
But their approaches are a lot different because they have a plan going up there.
Well, that's the difference. Yeah. Most guys who are close to the plate, like a Rizzo or a Carpenter, what's their plan? To pull or go oppo?
Well, I was a guy that crowded the plate.
I remember that.
So my whole point was I wanted them to challenge me in.
Yeah,
so you could pull.
You're trying to push a pitcher to his zone,
right? So you're trying to pull more, right?
I wanted to see what he had, and it was more of a macho move.
But the point is, guys who are close to the plate, physics wise, you're going to pull more. The length of your arm, the length of the bat, you're going to pull more.
Well, and you turn them middle away, pitch in the middle.
Right. Well, here's the point. You got Molina, let's say, or Ryan Braun, who are more oppo-based, so they're off the plate more. Here's why Justin Turner interests me so much. He's right on top of the plate, but he sprays. And I can't figure out why. Everybody knows what staying inside the ball is and working the inner half of the ball. So if any human, for those of you who don't know, for any human who hits a ball to the opposite field, you are hitting the inside half of the ball. Yeah. That's just how the physics work. And he's great at it. But he's also he's a 6-foot-something male adult, and he's right on top of the plate. So what I'd love to ask him is, why are you making this so hard on yourself? And now, obviously, to him, it's not hard. It's probably better. But now, Rafi, who now works here, who we've met, who's a major league catcher, I talked to him about it one day. He goes, hey, I caught against him. He heard me telling somebody that here, actually. And he goes, I'll tell you how he does it. He steps out. And I'm not saying he's wrong, but I don't see that on TV. Or he doesn't come all the way to square in his open stance, is what he was saying.
Well, maybe that angle though from the
exactly
you can't see.
But
the angle.
I'm telling you, I don't know how you get inside the ball when you're that close, when your hands are over the inside corner. The barrel's 34 inches long.
I think that's a comfortability thing. Like when I felt very far away from the plate if I stood normal in the box. And again, I felt like I couldn't get to the outside.
I'm not
pitch.
knocking. Everybody has their own things, but there's some physics to it. When if you're 6 foot tall and you have your arms this long and the bat's 33, how can you get the barrel to the middle pitch or whatever and inside out a hit and run or
I'll tell you this: I never hit anything. I hit a lot of foul balls.
Pull side.
Yeah, I missed a lot of home runs because of that.
Yeah, it changes your angles and you hook everything. That's why I don't get why people do it. No offense. And I knew saying this today, I knew I was going to bring it up because I knew you on your notes, but I knew you said you did it. And teach their own. Rizzo does it. He's made a whole career of it. Yeah. But I don't understand it. I don't understand why he'd want to take the risk of getting hit that much. I don't know why he wants to hit that many pull foul balls. And if he said to me, hey, whoever he doesn't know me, so if he said, hey, Hack, I want to hit home runs to Wrigley in the pull side and maybe center, but I don't want to. I'm like, dude, you're strong enough. I was strong enough to hit. I was strong enough to hit Oppo home runs in middle. I know he is.
I forgot who told me this. I don't know if it's true or not, but the reason that, and don't quote me on this, but it is a story that I heard, so it could be like literally nothing. I heard that Rizzo went on top of the plate because of the batter's eye at Wrigley Field, because you weren't able to see if it was a 3/4 release from the pitcher. You're not able to see it on the left side of the plate.
First of all, again, who knows? And that makes sense. But here's my first thought: there's been 700 other million left-handers to hit in that place for the Chicago Cubs.
You know who we need to ask? We need to ask Mike. We need to ask Mike about that.
You're right.
Hey, because he was a switch hitter, so he would know.
Right.
Yeah, it's way easier.
And it hasn't changed. The same field.
Same field. Same everything.
Same field.
We are way overdue on this podcast. We didn't get to the majority of the questions.
These were more fun. I read your question. These topics were more fun.
So, Spike, your question sucked.
No, they were very, they were for young teachers and instructors, and we're past that. Us three, so we could talk about more. And if we have to talk about it for little kids sometime, we can. Yeah.
Well, you can also, if you're a Tiger, you can go to the online course that you did. So. Which he goes over a lot of the basics that we talked about, the fundamentals. I would say that would be a white level type of, if we compared it to karate, a white level belt or hierarchy of needs, the very base of the pyramid.
Before we finish real quick, can I tell you a quick funny Seinfeld thing that
Absolutely
has to do?
Not. I love Seinfeld.
Yeah, so my wife still thinks it's funny, but every day in my life something happens that reminds me of a Seinfeld episode or something that happened in an episode. I mean, every day of my life, I'm not exaggerating. And today you keep talking about these belts and karate, right? Yeah. Which I obviously had no idea you were going to reference that.
Are you talking about the Cosmo Kramer?
So Cosmo Kramer, let me tell it. Cosmo Kramer wants to get his katra back, and Jerry and Elaine and George are like, "What's katra?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going into karate and I'm getting my confidence back because he got mugged or something in crappy ass New York. No offense to New York, but anyway, long story short is his guys that he's going to class with, Kramer, who's a 40-something-year-old adult at this point, by the way, comes to Jerry's apartment to pick him up, and it's a bunch of little kids. And Jerry goes, "Who's that?" And he goes, "Well, that's my karate partners." He goes, "You're fighting kids?" and they show a montage of
him
with
Bruce
just throwing kids and dragging them. So glad you brought that up because that'll make me laugh on the 34-minute ride home.
And then the kids even came back and they mugged him. It's a full circle.
Thank God you knew that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as funny if you. Did you know what we were talking about?
I did not.
I'll send you a clip of it today. Don't worry.
I made it. I wouldn't say a lot, but like on the podcast, I've done a couple of Seinfeld, like different things, and literally he's like just blank stare. I'm like, ah.
I've watched it. I've just never really gotten. I didn't watch it like intently like that.
Do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
A little bit.
Curb Your Enthusiasm is an R-rated version of Seinfeld. Yeah. It's insane. Yeah. Larry David's no offense to Jerry, I love Jerry, but Larry David's the genius.
Oh yeah.
And Larry David, if you like Curb Your Enthusiasm,
I like them both.
Curb Your Enthusiasm, go watch Seinfeld.
Yeah, I like them both.
It's actually amazing that Seinfeld lasted that long and they didn't even use one curse word.
And also the first 2 years, and I'm the biggest fan they were terrible. I can't watch the first 2 seasons. They were not.
I've never seen the first 2 seasons.
Don't.
Oh, really?
There's one of them. I'll give you a hint. There's one of them. The whole thing takes place in a parking garage, and they can't find their car.
Oh, I do
which is
remember that.
a neat concept because it's different, but it's the most boring. And then all of a sudden, whenever I think it was when David came in, but like year 3 through, I thought every episode was gold.
Oh yeah,
gold, Jerry, gold. That's Kenny Banya. But anyway.
Guys, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, please hit that subscribe button. We are going to post this on YouTube, so if you want to see Hack's beautiful face and his Top Gun T-shirt,
and my Van Halen chain,
and his Van Halen chain, you can do that. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want any information on the Rawlings Tigers or the course that Hacker created, send me an email, spiker@rawlingstigers.com. Dave is dburkby@rawlingstigers.com. And
I'm nothing.
And Hacker's still on Gmail.
Yeah, Van Hacker. What's wrong with Gmail? You mentioned Twitter earlier.
Yes.
Apparently a lot of people. Well, what is this Twitter thing again?
Oh my God, are you serious right now?
I don't have Twitter.
You don't have Twitter.
Nor do I want it. I do not have Twitter.
I feel like if you had
one of the
To
reasons,
be quite honest, it would make you really
Dave,
mad.
and I'm not making this up just because he's here. Dave Burkby told me years ago he'd show me some things, and this hitting guy says this, and I love how they pronounce it as fact. If you go back on this thing, I probably said, in my opinion, it's probably like a little annoying quirk to some people, but I've got to specify. This is just my opinion. Mm-hmm. People talk about this stuff like there's golden rules in there that you have to swing up. I've been teaching this for 25 years. You know how many people I've? Well, I was told I have to have my knuckles like this. I'm like, oh my God! There's still people taking money or coaching a high school that say you have to have your knuckles in the same spot. Are you kidding? And I know some of them. Some of them float around this building that are parents in the system.
Yeah.
And I love one of the guys. I'm like, what? Are you kidding? But Dave is the one who kind of, before I never wanted to anyway, but I'm not getting on Twitter because I'll start commenting back and then they'll say, who are you? And then I'll say, it'll be a disaster. So I'll just take the Twitter stuff from you. You guys can have the angst. And
I will say that I think people put too much weight on Twitter, on the so-called experts. I mean, because they base it off of facts. Like when you see something written, though, for whatever reason in human nature, we see something written and we claim it as fact.
Well, I think these days with news cycles, or whether it's real news or whether it's baseball, when you see somebody saying it, you say, well, you have to get on plane or you have to do this.
Yeah.
This is see, and watch, and you can show one clip of anybody doing anything. So you show a clip of some guy getting on plane and hitting it, but they don't show that, like, when you watch SportsCenter and they show some guy golf one out and the launch angles. I saw one Joey Gallo the other night. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm telling you, the guy swung straight up, and it went over that 285 sign or whatever it is down on the Yankee right field line. If it was 285, it went 286. It was a sky high home run. So you could take that clip and blow it up and say, see, this is how you do it. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some of those on there from you. Matt Carpenter, I remember. See how he gets his angle tilted and he swings up? I'm like, you see how he's on the bench? I mean, I can't be on there. I can't. But thank you for referencing it. I'll look into it.
Guys, thanks so much. We will catch you in the next episode.
Rock on.